Hello, it's Father Mark again. We're here at Our Lady of Mount Carmel Church in Wyandotte, continuing our tour of the church by way of the stained glass windows. So, just some starter information. The Church of Our Lady of Mount Carmel was started in 1915, cornerstone laid, and the edifice was finished in 1916. Architect of the building, Harry Rill, well-known architect at the time from the city of Detroit, had designed a few other churches besides ours. The church, as I have said previously, is laid out in the form of a cross. If you were to look at it from above, you would see it. So before we were in the transepts, which are the arms of the cross. Today we're in what's called the nave, which is the body of the cross. So we're on the north wall of the nave and the first bay from the altar. So today's window is a window that depicts an event in the life of St. Stanislaus Kostka. The window was put in 1916 by the Munich Stained Glass Window Company, as all the other windows in our church were put in by this company. It's a fine work, very artistic. It depicts an event in the life of St. Stanislaus. So who is St. Stanislaus Kostka? He was born in the year 1550. He was the son of Polish nobility, was born in a castle in that section of Poland which is called Mazovia or Mazovsha. That's the mid-northeast part of Poland. And you might be familiar with the Mazovsha dance group of musicians, very famous, coming from that area. So Stanislaus, from the very beginning, was kind of a delicate child. He wasn't particularly healthy, but he was extremely devout. So this window depicts one of his bouts with an illness, during which he was confined to his bed. At the time, he was away at school and living out of the country, outside Poland, living out of necessity in the home of some non-Catholics, who would not allow a Catholic priest to enter the house to bring Stanislaus Holy Communion. So in this window we see it's actually St. Barbara. It looks like the Blessed Virgin Mary, but the story goes that it was St. Barbara, very popular saint in Poland, that Stanislaus had a great devotion to. St. Barbara, in the time of his sickness, brought him Holy Communion. And the window shows her giving him the Holy Communion with the two angels standing by, one of them holding the communion paten. So, Stanislaus was also visited in his sick room by the Virgin Mary. And according to the stories that have been passed down, the Virgin Mary urged Stanislaus to join the Jesuits. And so this was his goal. Unfortunately, his wealthy family was very much against the idea, and they did everything that was possible to make it impossible for Stanislaus to join any local communities of the Jesuits in Poland. And so he decided that he would walk to Rome, 350 miles from where he lived in Poland to Rome, to ask the Superior General to allow him to enter the order. And so, at age 17 in 1567, he was received into the Jesuit order as a novice. Unfortunately, 9 months later, he died as a novice on the Feast of the Assumption, age 18. He was canonized in 1726 and then made one of the patron saints of Poland, where his feast day is celebrated in Poland on September 18th. So, now looking at this window again from an artistic point of view, notice the rays of heaven shining in the dark sick room from behind St. Barbara's head. St. Stanislaus' bed has a dark curtain around it, as was the style of the time, and there's a table with a glass of water next to it. The artist has added the details of the wood grain of the floor and the design woven into the blanket on the bed, and even the angel's garb and the purple bed curtain. Stanislaus in this picture is already dressed in the novice the habit of the novices of the Jesuit order. Surrounding the whole image, as all of the images in the church, is the Italian Renaissance framework. Finally, the inscription at the bottom of the window in Polish tells us who was the donor for the window, and it reads there, Ofiarowało Bractwo Świętego Stanisława Kostki, which is translated as offered by the St. Stanislaus Kostka Society. Now, this is rather significant because in 1854, when the city of Wyandotte began, there were no Polish parishes here. Polish people started coming to Wyandotte in the 1860s, and at that time they attended St. Patrick's Church and then St. Joseph's Church. Once a month, a Polish-speaking priest would come to take care of them. In 1870, there were enough Polish people living here in Wyandotte that they organized themselves into a group, and they called that group the St. Stanislaus Kostka Society. So eventually the numbers of Poles living in Wyandotte was large enough that they decided to approach Bishop Foley of Detroit to ask permission to form a parish, a Polish parish, their own parish. So this parish was formed in 1899. The first church was built in 1900, and this church that we are in today is built in 1916. It's interesting footnote, I guess, to say that the first break-off from the first Polish parish in Wyandotte was the parish of St. Stanislaus Kostka in 1914. Finally, I think it's rather significant, probably by accident, but still very significant, that this window portrays the sick receiving Holy Communion, and it is located in the church where the handicapped and sickly parishioners sit at Mass, and under this image of St. Stanislaus receiving Holy Communion, they do the same. So that is another one of our stained glass window treasures in the Church of Our Lady of Mount Carmel.